Thank you, everybody, for being such good sports during this process. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did, too. So as far as origins of innovations, the goal statement was to create a process that takes a business-driven approach to innovation, is balanced, which means not just tech-heavy, not just materials-heavy, and inclusive, both internally and externally. So I think that's a pretty good representation of a process that has a lot of power behind it, but also it has a significant number of challenges. Right? We had 10 pretty solid challenges and some really good discussion about that. So, in terms of what some of the key challenges are and the ones that kind of boil their way up to being things we prioritize as solutions, one of the biggest ones was creating an environment that's collaborative and understanding that collaboration takes a lot of time and effort. And we can't just put that on the back burner. This has to be prioritized, right? So that's one of the things as far as our solutions is encourage collaboration, but I think that also meant creating an environment and support that environment both at a leadership level, at a peer level, internally, externally. Communication, this is a common theme, obviously. Communicate successful innovations, and this was a solution that was really driven at the internal aspects of people not wanting to get on board because they don't understand why we're involved with innovation. It was internally communicating the successes of what we're doing, recognition, all of those things, but also the external part of it. We heard a lot about that, how important it is for us as agencies and as partners with our agencies to look out towards the public and look out to our peers and our other people that we collaborate, even federal highways. You want to know what we're doing and the successes we're having. So that communication aspect is really important. Third was culture, in one word. It's creating a positive innovation climate. And again, that's something that is just not comes out of thin air. It's something that has to be born and bred. It has to be supported at a leadership level. It has to be ingrained into our organization. It has to become part of our day-to-day operations. So there was a lot of challenges that went along with it is how do I prioritize my time and break myself away from my day-to-day production responsibilities and dedicate myself to something different, something outside the box, something I might not be comfortable with, something that's going to take some of my time and resources. So I thought that one was a really good one. And last is champions. And again, these themes sort of kind of come across over and over. But champions, it's not just putting somebody in a role, it's putting the right person in the role. And sometimes I've found that we have some brilliant engineers at WisDOT, really great people, top-notch talent. I'm not sure I want them being the advocate necessarily for the innovation, though. So getting the right person in the right role at the right time is a very critical piece of success moving forward. So again, I appreciate everybody's time on this. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and we addressed the related topic of outreach and communication. We talked long and hard about multiple entities. The Department of Transportation is still somewhat a siloed organization, and understanding what goes on in all those silos, what goes on at the district level, the division level versus what's going on at central office level was still a challenge. And it's a challenge whether you're a state the size of Texas or California, or you're in a state the size of a Rhode Island or of Minnesota. It's just universal, part of the issue there. I think in terms of our three solutions to better or ways to enhance and increase outreach and communication, focused and strategic communications. Everything that was just said is all very true. But add to that the fact that everyone has messages flying at them from all these different avenues and all these different places. So what is communicated has to be essential and essentially stated. And not every message is conveyed in the same way. So your elected official message is going to be different than what you want to educate your users, the traveling public about in terms of a roundabout or something that's changing their operations, their day-to-day routines. And again, the communications vehicle just within your Department of Transportation and your staff there is going to be somewhat different as well. And internal staff is where we move on work towards. Recognition. We talked about better recognition of individuals who are champions. And we heard earlier that sometimes if you volunteer, you become the de facto champion. Well, that's true. But if you have someone who is standing and leading a charge, why not recognize them more effectively? And if a project or an aspect of a project has been delivered more successfully, why not discuss that more openly and more directly? Again, in a focused and strategic manner. We talked about all the successes. We also talked about DOT sometimes don't do as good a job as they can or could do with respect to sharing these success stories internally and externally. So with successes came our third point, the don't punish failure. We heard that very clearly this afternoon as well. And I think with that, we have to be careful not to be shy of communicating the lessons learned from the failure. So failure, we don't want to internalize it. We want to educate through that experience. And with the risks that are associated sometimes with failure, we need the DOT leadership to make sure that that risk-taking is encouraged, it's allowed, it's permissible, it's part of what you do.
Our little speed dating group, we tackled to tell a compelling story, which is what Jan presented on earlier today. And we touched upon a lot of things, the hows, the whys, the challenges, the solutions. And I think what we came out of this, the sausage that we made, is we know we have to tell a compelling story to inform, to intrigue, to educate various audiences. And that might be internal engineers, which are an animal, a beast, onto themselves, the public, the politicians, our executives, everyone in our chain of who we touch, including stakeholders, contractors. How do we inform, educate, intrigue? Texas comes to mind. We had them talking about they're an emerging STIC. So how do we tell a story when we have no stories to tell yet, and have them keep wanting to come to the table and contribute to this thing called a STIC? There are challenges to that. But I think in my quick summation of thoughts, what we went through is an investigative reporter that either is a consultant or an in-house staff person that can take the numbers from the engineers and translate that into whatever audience story they need to hear, if it needs to be numbers-based, quantifiable, and then also convert that same story to something with heartstrings or something qualifiable. And then also spotlighting people, because who doesn't, elected politicians perhaps excluded, want to see their names in lights, and to build on that success and highlight either specific projects or specific people, and that might intrigue people to keep contributing. Did I just say that? Anyway, so I think, and hopefully I didn't do anyone disjustice in repeating what I think we heard in the last hour or so, but that's what we've come up with, a good investigative reporter who can tell the story and resonate on why it's important to tell that story.
So we talked about change management, and we actually developed a vision statement. Create conditions where people can engage and understand new thinking and innovations, or actually innovation management, to do things better, safer, more efficient, and with better value. So that was the vision statement. And then we identified challenges and the solutions, the top challenges with their solutions. So the challenge was to have actually dedicated staff and resources to implement specific products or those innovations themselves, and to have executive direction and support behind that dedicated staff and those resources. And then the other one that got the top vote was, so the challenge would be the gap in communication amongst all stakeholders, and the solution is to add communications and staff and to the STIC, as well as build the communication into the actual plan. And then the third was to develop the framework for, what does CM stand for? Change management. individual organizational scale of the innovation. So basically, to actually build it into the program, to make it a part of the actual implementation of those innovations.